There are certain television characters who arrive fully formed, as if they've always been there. They don't announce themselves with a flourish. They don't chase attention. They simply take their place in the room. And once they're there, television quietly rearranges itself around them. For British television audiences at the start of the 1960s, Inspector Maigret was one of those figures. He did not look like a hero. He did not behave like one. He did not solve crimes through brilliance, speed, or wit. Instead, he watched, he listened, he waited. He absorbed the mood of the place until the truth revealed itself. And in doing so, he helped define what serious television drama could be. The BBC's Maigret, starring Rupert Davies, ran from 1960 to 1963, following a one-off pilot broadcast the previous year. In terms of episode count, it was modest. In terms of impact, it was quietly transformative. This was not just another imported detective. It was a new tone, a new pace, and a new respect for the intelligence and patience of the viewer. This was detective fiction without glamour, and British television hadn't yet seen anything like it. Georges Simenon's Inspector Jules Maigret had already existed for 3 decades before British television encountered him. First appearing in the early 1930s, Maigret was not conceived as a puzzle solver in the English tradition. Simenon was not interested in clever clues or dazzling reveals. Instead, he wrote novels that were steeped in atmosphere, psychology, and social observation. Maigret's method was simple in theory and difficult in practice. He placed himself inside a situation and waited for the human truth to emerge. Crime, in Simenon's world, was rarely extraordinary. It was often the result of pressure, loneliness, resentment, quiet despair. The murderer was not a monster, but a person who had reached a breaking point. That worldview made Maigret a challenging character to adapt. He didn't do much, at least not in ways television normally liked to show. He smoked his pipe, he drank beer, he talked to people without hurry, he allowed silences to stretch. And yet, once Rupert Davies stepped into the role, it became clear that this approach was perfectly suited to the emerging strengths of British television drama. To understand why Maigret mattered, you have to understand where British television was at the time. The late 1950s had been a period of experimentation. Live drama, studio-bound productions, and theatrical traditions still dominated. Police series existed, but they were often procedural, brisk, or lightly moralistic. What Maigret offered was something else entirely. This was a series that trusted mood over momentum. It assumed that viewers would sit with discomfort, ambiguity, and quiet tension. It didn't rush to reassure you that order would be restored quickly or neatly. That confidence aligned perfectly with the BBC's growing ambition to treat television not just as entertainment, but as a serious dramatic form. Maigret didn't shout about this ambition, it simply embodied it. Casting Rupert Davies as Maigret was not an obvious choice, and that was precisely its strength. Davies was not a conventional leading man. He did not project authority through force or charm. Instead, he had a solidity about him, calm, thoughtful, and slightly distant. Physically, he bore little resemblance to Simenon's descriptions, but emotionally he captured the essence of Maigret perfectly. This was a man who carried the weight of other people's troubles, a man who absorbed misery without judging it, a man who seemed permanently tired, not bored, but burdened. Davies played Maigret as someone who felt crimes deeply, even when he pretended not to. His silences were not empty, they were listening silences. It was a performance built on restraint, and it was unlike anything else on British television at the time. It has often been reported that Simenon himself approved of Davies's interpretation, not because it matched the character physically, but because it captured something essential about Maigret's temperament. From its earliest episodes, Maigret established a tone that felt unmistakably adult. There was no jaunty theme music, no verbal exposition designed to catch up distracted viewers. Scenes unfolded slowly, often in medium shots, allowing conversations to breathe. There was no jaunty theme music and no verbal exposition designed to catch up distracted viewers. The series made remarkable use of pauses. Characters would say something, and then nothing would happen. No reaction shot, no musical cue, just the sense that Maigret was filing the moment away. This approach demanded attention. You could not half-watch Maigret, miss a line, miss a glance, miss a shift in tone, and you lost the thread. But for viewers willing to meet it halfway, the reward was immersion. This was television that trusted you to be present. One of the series' quiet achievements was its evocation of Paris. This was not a glamorous postcard Paris, nor was it a fully realistic one. It couldn't be, given the limitations of studio production. Instead, it was a psychological Paris. Rain-soaked streets, shadowed cafes, cramped rooms, and a pervasive sense of melancholy. The settings felt worn in. Lives felt lived. Poverty and frustration were not background details, they were part of the emotional fabric. In many ways, Maigret's Paris felt closer to post-war Britain than to France. The mood, cautious, bruised and inward-looking, resonated strongly with British audiences still living with the memory of austerity. The resonance mattered. Maigret may have been French, but its world felt familiar. What truly set Maigret apart was its refusal to mythologise the detective. Maigret was not cleverer than everyone else in the room. He was not always certain. Sometimes he was wrong. Sometimes he simply waited until someone else made a mistake. He did not deliver speeches. He did not explain his reasoning at length. Often, the solution arrived not as a triumph, but as a quiet inevitability. And when the truth emerged, it was rarely celebrated. The criminal was often pitied. The outcome felt sad rather than satisfying. Justice, such as it was, came with a cost. This was a profound shift from the moral clarity of much earlier television drama. Maigret suggested that understanding mattered as much as punishment, and sometimes more. Another strength of the series was its treatment of supporting characters. People were not introduced as suspects, they were introduced as people. Their occupations, routines, and frustrations were given space to exist independently of the plot. This made Maigret's investigations feel organic. The crime grew out of the environment rather than disrupting it. And when Maigret finally identified the culprit, it felt less like a revelation and more like a tragic conclusion. This approach demanded careful writing and confident direction. It also demanded an audience willing to accept that not every story ends cleanly. From a technical standpoint, Maigret reflected British television in transition. Still largely studio-based, the series nonetheless pushed against its limitations. Lighting was expressive, sets were designed for mood rather than spectacle, and camera work was deliberate and unobtrusive. Nothing drew attention to itself, and that was the point. Maigret did not want to impress you with technique, it wanted to hold you. This understated craftsmanship would become a hallmark of serious BBC drama throughout the 1960s and beyond. Audiences responded strongly. Maigret was popular without ever being flashy. Critics recognised it as something distinct, a series that treated crime as a human problem rather than an intellectual puzzle. Rupert Davies received significant acclaim, including a BAFTA award in 1962 for his performance, a rare honour for a television actor at the time, and a sign of how seriously the role was taken. The series quietly elevated expectations of what a television detective could be. Despite its success, Maigret ended in 1963. There was no dramatic cancellation or sudden collapse. The series had simply run its course. Rupert Davies moved on to other roles, and the BBC, as was often the case in that era, was content to let a successful programme end rather than stretch it beyond its natural lifespan. In hindsight, this restraint feels almost unimaginable, but it contributed to Maigret's lasting reputation. It ended with dignity. Maigret's influence is subtle but profound. It paved the way for later British detectives who prioritised character over action, figures defined by temperament rather than brilliance. More broadly, it demonstrated that television could handle slow drama, moral ambiguity and emotional depth, and that audiences would follow. Without Maigret, the evolution of British television drama in the 1960s would have looked very different. Today, Rupert Davies' Maigret can feel almost alien to modern viewers, accustomed to speed, spectacle, and constant explanation. But that alien quality is precisely what makes it valuable. This was television that respected silence, that understood that meaning could emerge gradually, that believed an audience would sit still and think. In an era increasingly dominated by noise, Maigret stands as a reminder of another way of doing things, a quieter way, a slower way, and in its own restrained manner, a deeply humane way. So Maigret does not linger in the cultural conversation in the way some later detectives do. There are no catchphrases, no iconic moments endlessly replayed. Instead, there is a feeling. The feeling of rain against glass, the feeling of smoke in the air, the feeling of a man sitting silently across the table, listening, really listening, while you talk yourself into the truth. That feeling is Maigret's legacy. And for a few remarkable years at the dawn of the 1960s, British television learned that sometimes the most powerful drama comes not from action, but from attention. And thank you very much for listening. And I hope that's brought back some great memories of Maigret or inspired you to seek it out. The DVD should be available on eBay or maybe in a charity shop. But have a look out for it. If not, it will be regularly on Talking Pictures TV, and it's very possibly on YouTube, although I haven't looked for that myself. So if you've seen it or if you're going to find it and watch a couple, let me know what you think of that. If you've enjoyed this video and you've reached this point, please, you owe me a like and subscribe at this point. All right? So thank you very much again for listening. I do appreciate it, and I will see you next time with something else. All right. Anyway, thanks very much. Bye.